I stopped going to my studio as of last week, um, aside from like, you know, grabbing some things to be at home with. I've also decided to not try and pretend that I should keep working in the same ways that I was. Um, I think that that's important, actually. I also totally believe that you don't need a studio to make art. um, so I think somebody that has always prized the make do attitude, but now more than ever, it's so important to be okay with, you know, people and animals running around you as things are happening. Like art in real time in real life is messy and weird, and that's okay. So I'm just trying to embrace that, and also like embrace a different pace. Um, like this is this is heavy. This is big and real and serious stuff. But you know, I'm giving myself a break about what like being productive means during this time, and just sort of being in it and feeling all the feelings. So right now, um, current status at home is my dining room table, uh, which was a free find at the mill where my studio is, is like doing all of the work. It's my mini art studio. It is where I do my freelance design jobs. It is where we eat dinner when we're not in front of Netflix. It's where we are starting to grow seeds. It's like doing the work right now. So I live in like a super tiny house. This is my table. This is like Grand Central. So I have a couple projects going. So I have a lot of different ways of working. Um, and I wanted to give myself a couple options, knowing that like moods change right now pretty rapidly. So I wanted to give myself like a few different ways of making stuff. So I brought home a drawing, just like a colored pencil drawing. Work on paper is pretty important to me anyway, but so there's one that I'm working on right now. So, you know, just a pretty straightforward drawing on paper. I do love drawing anyway because I feel like it's so accessible. And then I also brought home one of the charms. So I've been thinking about charms and memorabilia and keepsakes and souvenirs, and I'm making a charm bracelet, a large sculpture that is composed of these charms. So I brought one home to work on that. So it's like, it's not an artwork in itself, it's just a piece of, it's one small component of an artwork, but it just involves like gluing thread. So it's more of a craft, feels more of a craft project. So I'll show you that too quick. So this is, I don't know if you can see that okay. It's the charm is gonna be a Poochie scarf. It's going to be a vintage Poochie scarf, and so I'm actually making it because in response to this story one of my friends wrote, where she talks about going to yard sales, and I've been thinking a lot lately about, you know, how much I rely on other people's stuff, like for inspiration in my art. I do tons of yard sailing and collecting and gathering of things that have been used and well worn and well loved of people, from people, and that's going to change too. I mean, we're not going to be able to go yard sailing or anything like that for a while. So just been thinking about that. On a normal day when I would go to my studio, I do like kind of starting out with doing something that involves repetition, like repetitive mark making stuff. Um, like those leisure weave drawings that I make involve lots of straight lines, or the rag rug drawings involve lots of like making these vertical lines with stops. So I like to sort of, and really it almost acts as like a little meditation to start a day. And sometimes and then I just let it go from there. You know, I do feel like it's really, for me, it's important to bring project ideas with me into my studio, but it's also equally as important to pay attention to the opportunities that come from making itself, like the surrendering to the process part of it. Those two things, I think, act in parallel for me. So I wouldn't say my day is really scripted at all, apart from knowing that I'm leaving something in a state that I can, you know, get back into to start my day. I do kind of let things evolve as I'm in there without a lot of plan. I think just as a little bit of a wider question, I mean, artists responding to the pandemic digitally, um, I think artists in general responding to this in general, I've been less worried about my artist friends. I guess meant from a mentally and emotional standpoint, not necessarily like the financial standpoint, but I have faith in art and artists. Of anything in the art world industry, I think like art and artists are guaranteed to survive this. And it will adapt and look different and change, but art has always been, and I think it always will be. But as far as it's adapting to digital, it's interesting. At first, you know, all of those galleries were popping up overnight in support of shows that, I mean, I have friends whose shows are literally hanging in closed museums that didn't get to open, you know, and that's hard. And I think that was amazing to start those sort of support posts in support of affected shows. It does give me kind of, it's like you have like a sense of pride about your industry when you see stuff like that. You're like, see, like we're already figuring out ways. That being said, I think that I would love more of the emphasis to be about how do we support each other, and how are we adapting to this and living inside of it, as opposed to emphasis being on how are we just continuing production. You know, in general, I just think it's really important to say, like, this is different, this is big and serious, and it calls for different. We owe it that. I also think artists will find ways to respond to, interpret, talk about this moment for a long time to come. So in a lot of ways, trying to like, but that takes digestion, at least for me. I need to kind of back off a little bit of like social media stuff, just me personally, and digest what's going on. Like it's hard, that's a hard thing to do in real time. Um, this is also the kind of thing that changes the way people think and make. And you also, I don't know if I believe in sharing that in real time. For me personally, there's a digestion period that's got to happen and a little bit of a slowdown. But I think, again, it's different for everyone, the way they approach this. And they're all those ways are valid because we've never been here before. I think, this is a totally different model for the situation of being in art school. It's heartbreaking to hear about. I mean, I know how important that show is and how hard you work for it and towards it. But that doesn't mean, I think it means neither do you have to, are you required to shift immediately and try and figure out a way to get your work out there and continue your pace. You don't have to. If you think of those ideas, that's wonderful, but don't beat yourself up if you're not. And to the students that are saying, should we just freeze and wait until this passes? I think that the change of pace is important to acknowledge and be in, but think about it as letting it go through you and not just pass over you. So if you do choose that route, be in it. Don't just sort of hibernate and wait till this storm's going to pass and it will be back to normal again. I would say go through it. Try to have eyes wide open about it. So that maybe after we're through this stage of it, you'll have some information about how you'll keep going. I think it's important to realize that this is going to change structures of things for a long time. It's not just necessarily a one show being closed. This will birth new models of sharing and making, for sure. And it will also solidify the fact that artists are adaptable and able to make things in response to and inside of even things like this. So have some faith in that and know that you're going to be a part of that. You might get to create the new chapter of the art world. Like, you are the first. Does this suck because we don't understand it? Yep, totally does. Ask the people that graduated from school in 2008 and 9. This is a different thing, but coming out in a recession, that was a similar feeling. So it will get through, but it will be different on the other side, I think.